Blows with a metal rod, punches to the face, hands lacerated, electric shocks, suffocation, waterboarding, naked detention in a cage with a dog, exposure to below freezing temperatures. These are among the tortures inflicted on Ukrainian civilians illegally detained in Russian prisons. Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshina was digging into this story until it became her own. In early summer 2023, Victoria started investigating the stories of Ukrainian civilians being detained, tortured, and sometimes left to die in Russian prisons, far from any legal framework. Roughly 16,000 civilian hostages are believed to be held. That August, she traveled to Russian-occupied Ukraine to report on these ghost detainees, but she became one of them when she herself was arrested, tortured, and died in detention. Forbidden Stories and 12 media partners took over Victoria's investigation. For several months, 45 journalists joined forces to trace Victoria's trajectory into the occupied Ukrainian territories in Russia, uncovering the opaque system of detention facilities where Ukrainian civilians are kept and tortured.
Victoria's father.
Вітаю, ви дивитесь «Громадське», мене звати Вікторія Рощина.
Determined, intense, hard-nosed, and sometimes confrontational, the 27-year-old journalist gained her reporting chops working for several Ukrainian media outlets.
Питання з приводу... Ні, будь ласка, можна у нас питання?
She was deeply involved on what she was doing. Vika was the only one reporter who covered occupied territories, and for her it was a mission. We discussed with her so many times, you know that it's risky, you know that it's dangerous. She said, okay, you're against that, but you have to know that I'm definitely going there. She was the only one who was brave enough to travel.
Victoria traveled to the occupied territories for at least the fourth time in July 2023, heading to the Zaporizhia region. There, she disappeared and was held incommunicado for months, meaning without access to legal representation or contact with the outside world. She was likely arrested in Enerhodar, then held in an informal torture and detention center in Melitopol. She was later transferred across the border to a pretrial detention center in Taganrog, nicknamed Russia's Guantanamo.
Вона сиділа в сусіді від мене через одну від мене камеру, і от вона тривалий час відмовлялася їсти. І вона їх напряму називала там ви коти, ви вбивці, ви там. І ми, я принаймні особисто я не захоплювався. Її позиція була, що вона з ворогами не хотіла йти на співробітництво, і ніхто з тих, кого я знаю, від собі такого не міг дозволити.
Victoria remained in Taganrog for 9 months. She was almost certainly tortured there. Russia announced her death in captivity in October 2024. There was no evidence, no body. Then, complete silence for months. Her father still doesn't believe she is truly dead. Her body was returned to Ukrainian authorities in February 2025, among 757 corpses returned as part of a body exchange. An initial DNA test revealed with 99.99% certainty that the body was Victoria's. Victoria's story is that of thousands of Ukrainians living in the occupied territories. Ukraine's human rights ombudsman estimated that 16,000 civilian hostages were being held in Russia and the occupied territories of Ukraine. Some are accused of terrorism or sabotage, often based on forced confessions obtained under torture. Others are not even formally charged. They have no rights, no visits. Their families are left with few answers.
Я очень по вам скучаю. Мамуля, соскучился за твоими тортиками и ландориками. Надеюсь, что скоро у нас всех увижу. Главное, берегите себя и дождитесь меня. Це він затриманий в окупованій, а він знаходиться зараз в Мордові. І він там знаходиться 2 роки. Їх повинні відпускати, їх не мають права там тримати.
Consortium members conducted more than 50 interviews with former detainees, relatives, legal experts, and former prison guards. Based on these accounts, we were able to identify 29 sites in the occupied territories in Russia where Ukrainian civilians have been subjected to torture or ill treatment.
Я там нічого не бачила, бо майже весь час перебувала в мішки на голові. Вимога стояти з 6 ранку до 10 вечора. Я одного разу просто вже не могла стояти, в мене розвалювалася спина, я втрачала свідомість. І він просто скинув мене, схватив за ногу і скинув на підлогу з другої цієї нари і бив. Це неможливо. Я не знаю, як я це пережила.
Some of these detention centers are informal: industrial garages, basements, warehouses, barns, police stations, often referred to as torture chambers. Others, however, are official facilities. Ukrainian civilians are also held in pretrial detention centers such as Taganrog or prison camps.
Чесно, Таганрог – це, певно, паща із зубами, яка просто перемелює, перегризає, перекусює, ламає волю і просто з людини робить істоту. Як людина, не коштує нічого. Людське життя – це нуль. Тобто вони хотіли бити, вони били. Вони хотіли використовувати струм, вони використовували. Вони хотіли чоловіків саджати на пляшки, вони садили. Хлопців на цих допитах, знаю, що геть по статевих органах лупцювали. Спершу змушували викласти на стіл, а потім по ним лупцювали.
Through hours of situated testimony by former prisoners, our partners at the Washington Post were able to create a 3D model of the Taganrog pretrial detention center, enabling viewers to virtually enter its walls. In Taganrog, jailers were given carte blanche for all forms of torture. This took place in the basement. According to sources in Ukrainian intelligence, at least 15 people are believed to have died from torture and beatings there.
It's clear that it's organized. It's clear that it's systematic. That level of organization can only be approved at the highest levels. There are members of the FSB, the security forces, actors within the prison service, as well as the military that are involved in this type of torture. Of course, they're violations of the laws of war.
The Russian presidency, FSB, and Federal Penitentiary Service did not respond to our questions. When contacted by our partner iStories, a Russian prison observer mocked our inquiries.
Да, слушаю.
Игорь, здравствуйте, меня зовут Ирина, я журналистка. Я сейчас пишу материал про СИЗО-2 в Таганроге и видела, что вы вот посещали его буквально в декабре 2024 года. Это же верно?
Что, блядь?
Я Игорю Амельченко позвонила.
Да, но вы какой-то бред несете.
СИЗО номер 2 в Таганроге вы не посещали как председатель общественной наблюдательной комиссии?
А вы с хохлами не общались там?
As of today, a ceasefire has still not been signed between Russia and Ukraine. Russia continues to illegally occupy parts of Ukrainian territory.
Кількість злочинів зросла в геометричній прогресії. Це дуже добре видно по нашій базі. Інтенсивність злочинів зросла. Для нас це виглядає як невиправдана жорстокість, але, на жаль, це цинічний розрахунок. Це метод ведення війни. Коли росіяни захоплюють територію, вони мають утримати ці території під своїм контролем. І для цього їм потрібен терор проти цивільних. Терор вимагає ресурсів. Тому ось ці викрадення і катування мають бути такими жорстокими, щоб послати сигнал більшості, що якщо ви бодай щось будете робити, ми запідозримо вас в нелояльності, ви ось цю жахливу долю повторите.